Let's go ahead and get started, folks. I will now call to order the meeting of the Omaha Planning Board. The Planning Board members that are here today are Sidney Franklin, Jeff Moore, Patrick Morris, Michael Pate, Jorge Sotolongo, Dave Rosacker, Vice Chair, and I'm Greg Rosenbaum, Chairman. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Dave Fanslau, Planning Director, Eric England, Assistant Planning Director, Mike Carter, Current Planning Manager, Robert LaRocco, Planning Board Administrator, Jennifer Taylor of the City Law Department, and Debbie Hightower is our Recording Secretary. Our rules of procedure are as follows. Notice of this hearing has been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on the table in front of us. You are welcome to come down and pick, pick one up. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases have been recommended for approval or layover, have already been heard, or are perceived by the Planning Board to be non-controversial. Therefore, will be read and voted on without the opportunity for your testimony. If you wish to testify, you may remove the case from the consent agenda. When each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will then be removed. This case will then be heard in the order in which it appears on the regular agenda after we go through the consent cases. When the case is heard, you will have the opportunity to come to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant. After the applicant states their case, we will hear from proponents, and then we will hear from opponents. After both sides are heard, the public hearing will be closed, and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and with respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones. Our decision to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department, all communications to board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they're made a part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. A current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act can be found in a white binder in this room. And there are no changes to the consent agenda, so I'll get started with the reading of the consent cases. And remember, if you want a case removed, you're going to have to stand up or raise your hand and let me know. The first case on the consent agenda is agenda item number 3, case C7-21-122, applicant Bob Purcell, JTB LLC. It is on for approval. Request approval of a conditional use permit to allow indoor sports and recreation in the CC district. This was laid over from our May and our September meetings. Location 20320 Blondo Parkway. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 7, case C10-21-75, C12-21-76, applicant McGill Development, LLC. It is on for approval. Request revised preliminary plat and final plat approval of McGill Industrial Park, formerly Rainwood Industrial Park, a subdivision outside city limits with a waiver to section 53.8.2B cul-de-sac length, along with rezoning from AG to DR and GI. Portions of the property are located within the floodway and flood fringe overlay districts. Location, southwest of Blair High Road and State Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 8, case C10-21-47, C12-21-48. Applicant Woodsonia 168 State LLC. It is on for approval. Request revised preliminary plat and final plat approval of the Hill, lots 172 through 395, outlots E through K, a subdivision outside city limits, a portion being a cluster subdivision with rezoning from AG to DR, R4, and R5. Location northeast of 168 and State Streets. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 9, case C10-21-268, C12-21-269. Applicant is Choice Homes. It is on for approval. Request preliminary plat approval of Serenity Villas, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from DR to R5. Location 2240 Skyline Drive. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 10, case C3-21-270, C10-21-271, C12-21-272. Applicant Celebrity Homes, Omaha. It is on for approval. Request preliminary plat approval of Woodbrook Valley, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to R4, along with approval of a variance to the present development zone boundary of the urban development element of the city's master plan. Location, south of 186th and Ida Streets. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 11, case C10-21-273, applicant Connor Hanson. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from GI to R5, location 1812 Sailor Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 12, case C10-21-274, applicant Choice Homes. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from R1 to R2, location 505 South 90th Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 13, case C10-21-275, applicant Mick McGuire. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from R2 to R4, location 13319 Cotner Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 14, case C10-21-276, applicant Omaha Investment Holdings, LLC. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from R8 to CC. Property is located within an ACI 3 overlay district. Location 655 North 108th Ave. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 16, case C10-21-278, applicant Lapis Advisors, LP. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from CC to R8, location 7270 Cedar Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 17, case C8-21-258, C7-21-259, C10-21-264. Applicant Michael Murphy. It is on for layover. Request approval of a large project special use permit to allow development over 10 acres in size, along with conditional use permit to allow warehousing and distribution limited in the CC district, and approval of the ACI 3 overlay district. Location 10910 Mill Valley Road. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay. Seeing none, agenda item number 18, case C8-21-279, applicant Myron Minifield. It is on for layover. Request approval of a special use permit to allow automotive sales in the GC district. Location, southeast of 30th Street and Kansas Avenue. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. And finally, case number 21, agenda item number 21, case C7-21-282, applicant Melissa Riberish, Wagon Ranch LLC. It is on for approval. Request approval of a conditional use permit to allow pet services in the GI district. Portions of the property are located within a flood fringe overlay district. Location 6105 North 89th Circle. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. From the board, do we have a motion for consent items that are on for approval?
A motion to approve agenda items number 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, and 21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Do we have a motion for consent items on for layover?
Move to lay over items 17 and 18.
We have a motion and a second. I was going to say Lisa. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin, Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
All those items that were on consent have been voted on. There will be no further action taken today. If you were here for one of those, you are welcome to leave or you're welcome to stay. We'll get started with the next agenda item. It's administrative meeting only, which means there won't be the opportunity for any public testimony. It's agenda item number 1, case C10-18-31, C12-18-32. Applicant Gerald Torzen, Richland Homes, LLC. Request final plat approval of Chestnut Hills, lots 107 through 251, outlots D through J, formerly Hunsaker, a subdivision outside city limits along with rezoning from AG to R4. Location northeast of 177th and Clay Streets. Eric.
Yeah, so this is the second phase final plat of Chestnut Hills. There was previously a second phase final plat that came before the board, earlier this summer, that did not proceed to city council. The applicant has decided to combine the second and third phases into a larger second phase. So this will plat the remaining portion of the subject area. There are 146 single-family lots and 7 outlots included within this phase. There'll be a couple items need to be confirmed regarding debt ratio, and the tree mitigation plantings will need to be located within outlots. That'll have to be worked out with the subdivision agreement prior to forwarding to City Council. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to R4 and approval of the final plat subject to addressing the 2 conditions in the recommendation report prior to forwarding to City Council.
Thank you, Eric. Any comments or questions from the board? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the rezoning from AG to R4 and approval of the final plat subject to addressing the 2 conditions in the recommendation report prior to forwarding the request to City Council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin, Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, moving on, agenda item number 2, case C12-21-244. Applicant Mark and Judith Smith request preliminary and final plat approval of Smithville, a subdivision outside city limits with waivers to section 53.8G pavement width, section 53.92 street grading, section 53.93 street surfacing, including curb and gutter, section 53.96 storm sewer, and section 53.99 sidewalks. This was laid over from our September meeting. Location, southeast of 72nd Street and Dutch Hall Road. May we hear from the applicant?
I'm Mark Smith.
Yeah, come forward, Mark, and give your name and address and
The address of the plot.
where you're living.
Oh, I'm Mark Smith. I live at 6611 Dutch Hall Road, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. I'm here to request not having to do a hard surface on the gravel road now. What we're looking to do is just plot off the 3 houses that are there. The ground's been in our family since the 60s. And my daughter, son, and my sister's daughter want to purchase the houses that are there, and we're leaving the land as is, which is rural land. A couple of horses run on the pastures, and we do some, baling of some hay. And each house already has its own driveway, and each pasture has a driveway that goes in there. And it's something I really couldn't afford to do is to hard surface Dutch Hall Road in that area. So that's what I'm requesting.
Okay.
Any questions for me, or
How long have you lived there?
how long have I lived there? I've lived in my house there probably about 16 years.
16.
The family, my parents owned it before they passed, but have had the that whole plot there for like 1968. So,
Okay. Thank you.
and we're not planning on doing anything other than just do this and leave it as is. So,
Okay.
Okay.
is that it for me?
So, yeah, so far,
thank you.
thank you, Mark. Matt, is there anything you can do to, it's hard to hear from that, it's up all the way, or, okay. All right. Are there any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Before we hear from Eric, any additional comments or questions? Okay, Eric?
Yeah, so before us is a subdivision request that would create 5 lots, 3 of those which would have an existing home on them, and then 2 larger lots which would not have any homes. Obviously, you read several subdivision waiver requests. The applicant is, as he stated, does not want to make any improvements to Dutch Hall Road. The subdivision or the platting process, Chapter 53 of the Municipal Code, requires improvements to be made at the time of subdivision or platting. So the creation of these lots kicks in those requirements to improve Dutch Hall Road. Now, there are several subdivision waivers that can be supported due to the location of this site in the North Hills Overlay District in the Ponca Hills. Those waivers that can be supported would be to reduce pavement width from 25 feet to 22 feet, to not provide curb and gutter, to not provide storm sewer, and to not provide sidewalks. However, staff, meaning planning and public works departments, do not support no improvements to the street. Even if this was on a local street, we would have that same requirement, especially being on this larger arterial Dutch Hall Road, although it doesn't appear that way because of its current rural nature. But we are supportive of those waivers that I had mentioned, but the recommendation report is saying that we would require improvement to a 22-foot wide paved street. We're consistent. We receive this request frequently in pre-application meetings. I know there are several homes that are non-conforming and did not improve streets, whether they were done decades ago or they had different requirements. I can't account for those, but we have been consistent, staff has, in requiring or recommending requiring those improvements to be made. A few other items to note. There are additional environmental overlay criteria that apply to this area. So we would require a note on the plat indicating that those North Hills Environmental Resource Overlay District requirements would apply. That could bring in special use permit requirements if there are new homes that would be constructed on those 2 lots that do not currently have a home. That deals with the amount of grading or the amount of tree removal. So we're not requiring any special use permit at this time because we do not have any housing plans. So unless you have any questions, either for planning or public works, we have several approvals and denials of waivers that I can get into, but I'll leave it to see if there's any questions at this time.
Since this is repaving a county road, Dutch Hall Road, what's the thickness of the concrete that's required on that?
Ryan, I'll call Ryan Haas from Public Works. I don't know if he knows that exact dimension or if that would require coordination with Douglas County Engineer's Office, but
Is there any waiver on the thickness possible?
I'll defer to Public
Okay.
Works.
Ryan Haas of the Public Works Department. We'd really have to coordinate with the county engineer's office to see what design criteria. Typically on the county roads, it'd be between 7 and 9 inches. But as far as waivers of thickness, I don't know that there's latitude there. We'd need the road to be built to county standards.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep.
Any additional questions, comments from the board? Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, so I will read all this. If you so choose, you can make a recommendation subject to the conditions that I stated, or you can read them all out, either way. Staff recommends denial of the waiver to section 5392, street grading, denial of the waiver to section 5393, street surfacing, approval of the waiver to section 5393, street surfacing for no curb and gutter only, approval of the waiver to section 5396, storm sewer, approval of the waiver to section 5399, sidewalks, approval of the waiver to section 538G, pavement width subject to providing a minimum 22-foot wide paved street, approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 5 conditions in the recommendation report, approval of the final plat subject to meeting conditions of the preliminary plat and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to forwarding to City Council.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I will move denial of the waiver to section 5392, street grading, denial of the waiver of section 5393, street surfacing, approval of the waiver to section 5393, street surfacing for curb and gutter only, approval of the waiver to section 5396, storm sewer, approval of the waiver to section 5399, sidewalks, approval of the waiver to section 538G, pavement width subject to providing a minimum of 22 feet paved street, wide paved street, and approval of the 5 conditions outlined in the recommendation report, and approval of the final plat subject to meeting the conditions of the preliminary plat, and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement, if necessary, prior to forwarding the request onto City Council.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Franklin? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Yes.
Morris? Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, if I might, just a comment.
Yes,
Mr.
go
and Mr.
ahead.
Smith, I would really highly recommend that maybe you get with the planning department, meet personally. They're very helpful. They can maybe provide you with some guidance and some help. So maybe if it helps to meet with them, I would certainly recommend that you would try and meet personally with the planning department as well.
Yeah, and I probably should have mentioned in my statement that, there are some transfer options that you can do with the existing homes, but it's really the creation of the lots and creation of the 2 new lots that's the problem, so.
Okay. I close the public hearing, but Judith, if you want to come up. Oh, okay. Michael handled it. Okay. All right, Judith. Moving on, agenda item number 4, case C3-21-266, applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of the 2014 Pierce Townhomes TIF redevelopment project, project plan. Location 2014 and 2016 Pierce Street, and Don, you're presenting.
See if we can change these microphones around to maybe point more directly at people. Yes, good afternoon, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department, on behalf of the project, 2014 Pierce TIF project plan. The site is located near 20th and Pierce Streets. This is Leavenworth here, 24th project site. It includes 2 parcels, one of which is vacant, one that has a single-family home in very poor condition. That home will be demolished, and we'll see new construction of a row house style residential building on the site. It'll contain 9 market rate rental units. Each of the units will have a 2-car garage or 2-stall garage. Developers Megumi 2 LLC, managed by Grace and Michael Longley, who are also of Galadriel Properties LLC. Total project cost is a little north of $2.5 million. They're asking for $304,522 in TIF support. This project's been approved by the city's TIF committee, meets the required criteria of the city's TIF program. It's an appropriate land use for the area and complies with the goals of the city's master plan. Let me show you a couple pictures. This is a flat elevation. See 3 stories, lower level being the garage, stalls. And I'll leave you with a colored rendering to look at, but we ask for your approval.
Okay,
Thanks, Don.
thank you, Don. Any other proponents?
Mr. Chair, board members, Robert Griffith, 11440 West Center Road, here on behalf of the applicant, Megumi 2 LLC. Thank you, Don, for the presentation. He does a great job as always. I would just point out one more thing briefly. I think this is a great use of TIF. It's put together a really nice townhome complex in a site that is currently vacant and blighted. Additionally, the annual tax revenue increase for the city would be $37,000 over the course of 15 years. That would amount to a little over $560,000. There's also 44 new construction jobs created by this project with a payroll of a little over $1 million. And then also a big focus of this is the creating a community kind of environment, emphasizing walkability close to downtown, so really elevating the area. So with that, I'm here for any other questions you might have. Thank you.
Robert, any meeting with the neighbors or?
I'm not aware of any meeting. We haven't had anyone reach out to us. The 2 spots are vacant, and then around it, I don't know how much residences there are. I know there's a few businesses around there, but currently the spot is a vacant home on it, so we haven't had any meetings of now. But
Thank you.
So you haven't heard from any
no,
neighbors or anything?
no, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments, questions from the board? Eric, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just as you're aware, we had a rezoning and a PUR on this site at last month's meeting, which will also proceed to City Council. Staff recommends approval.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Lisa. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, agenda item number 5, case C3-21-267. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of a local landmark designation location, 20515 Corby Street. And welcome, Shelley, to your, I guess, first public planning board meeting.
Yes, I wasn't aware of your little overhead projector, so. Yes, good afternoon. My name's Shelley McCafferty. I'm the Preservation Administrator for the Planning Department. I'm here on behalf of the Historic Preservation Commission. The property that we have a request, for which we have a request from the owner to designate it a historic landmark, is the Old Town Hall in Elkhorn. This is just off of Main Street. The property was constructed in 1904. Use was discontinued in 1966, and it's been used for storage since that time. The owner submitted a landmark application. He would like to be able to access historic preservation tax credits in order to rehab the property. The Historic Preservation Commission concurred with the owner and found that this property is significant under Standard A for historical and cultural importance. The property was used from 1904 through 1966 as the town hall, the center of government for the village, for the community. It also served an important purpose for social and cultural gatherings, significance. The 4-H was out of here, the Girl Scouts. It was the election center for the township of Chicago. So it had a lot of significance throughout its history. The Historic Preservation Commission was recommending approval that this is designated a Omaha local landmark. Any questions?
Any questions for Shelley? Thank you, Shelley.
Thanks.
Any other proponents wishing to speak?
Hi, Shelley.
Hello. I know, we've spoken many times.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Good.
Tyler Kearns. Do I have to, state my name and address?
Yep.
2610 North Main Street. I live in downtown Elkhorn. This will be the second building I've redone. The previous one is it was built in 1917, but it was a mechanics garage. And I put my business as well as my home in it. But I do glass blowing, and we have an art gallery in it. My wife and I run that, as well as 5 other artists that use the area. But this building obviously has a little more of an importance to us in downtown Elkhorn, considering that it has that historical aspect to it. She hit a lot of the main points that I was going to refer to, but it's got this steeple or cupola on top. From the volunteer firefighters from 1904 all the way up into the 30s. They were there. They had all their equipment in the back of it. If you go inside the building, there's actually a large, walk-in vault with the door still there. That's really, really cool. Obviously, all of the governmental documentation for weddings and everything else that went through the town of Elkhorn were stored there. Then on top of that, there is a small jail cell that, listening to some of the older generations, they have assured me only drunks have been in. No one very excitable. But I was very hopeful. Obviously, I'm a younger gentleman, but I really love the aspect of restoring a building like this to its natural glory and to really keep it to its original context. There's obviously another way of going about this, and it's to fix it up, but then I'm not getting that historical aspect in the building. And if you actually see in the picture she has, you can see there's a little stone in the corner of it, and it has 6 names on that stone. And 3 of those families still actually live in Elkhorn to this day. And we've had news articles with those families in front of this building as they go through the building. And it's still so neat to know that these people and their relations are still here. And, just knowing that this building, I have it in here somewhere, but I think it was like $1,055 is what they paid to put it up. And every single one of the workers that was from Elkhorn that worked on it put their name on it, and those 3 families are still there to this day. And so, I just would love to see this go back to its natural state. Again, like Shelley mentioned, it sat pretty much vacant as a storage unit for 40 years, and so it is in rough shape, but I think the bones are there, and obviously with the exterior alone, you really get to see what an original town hall would look like from 1904. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'm going to close public hearing. Comments or questions from the board? Eric, did you want to add anything?
Just that staff recommends approval.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion, a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin. Moore,
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 7-0.
Okay, we're going to take agenda items number 6 and 20 together. I will read 6 and 20 here right now. Agenda item number 6, KC 10-21-242, C 12-21-243. Applicant Youth Emergency Services, Inc. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Jackson Tower Replat 1, a minor plat inside city limits with rezoning from R8 to CBD. Property is located within an ACI 1 overlay district. Location northwest of 27th Street and St. Mary's Avenue. And agenda item number 20 is case C8-21-283, C7-21-261. Applicant Youth Emergency Services, Inc. request approval of a special use permit to allow large group living in the CBD and approval of a conditional use permit to allow a non-commercial day shelter in the CBD. Property is located within an ACI 1 overlay district. Location northwest 27th Street and St. Mary's Avenue. Mary, you had me worried a little bit ago. I was looking for you. I didn't see you. You're tucked back in here. Go ahead.
My name is Kyle Hazy with E&A Consulting Group, representing the client, 10909 Mill Valley Road, Omaha, Nebraska. Along with myself, Mary Fraser Mintz, the Executive Director for Youth Emergency Services, and Bill Stott, the architect with, for this project, is in the audience as well. As was mentioned, the project is located on the corner of St. Mary's and 27th Street. It is currently about 3 acres in size and is one lot. This lot includes OHA's Jackson Tower, and it also includes the vacant OHA office building. We're looking to replat this into 2 lots and rezone to CBD. Lot 1 would include the existing OHA tower, and then Lot 2 would be the proposed improvements and location for the Youth Emergency Services building. I'm going to go through a couple items on the site plan and building elevations, and then I'll let Mary handle any questions as far as description of what Youth Emergency Services does, and then their operational statement and what services they provide. For the site, as shown here, oops, flip it around. In this grayed out, white out area here, this is the existing Jackson Tower. The new lot line would follow this black line through here. This would be the new proposed Youth Emergency Services building. The middle section that sticks out, that is the existing OHA office building. That would be renovated, and then the other wings would be added on. The existing OHA building, as shown here in this image, this building has been vacant for about 8 years. With that vacancy comes some problems with vandalism and with some people breaking in. With this project, we'd be able to regenerate and reactivate this building and take some of those problems away that are generated with a vacant building. As we move up, this is the renovation of looking at this would be the revised and renovated existing office building, and then the wings to the left. Besides the other portions of the site plan, is we have parking that provides services and access to the new building, and then the back side of the project as a play surface for youth and youth that have kids themselves, a basketball area. There are some raised beds that they can use for gardening, and then a dog run area and some open play as well. Besides the renovation of the west side of the building, here are some images. This would be to the south portion of the building. This is a renovation of the back play areas from the basketball court and the raised vegetable gardens. This is another image that shows at night with the extra lighting that this building is provide. It'll provide more of a sense of security with the extra lighting and the activity within the area to make people feel more secure at night and then walking in the area. That's the site plan view. And then there's an image from the entrance to the south, and you can see how that lighting and those people just activates the area and make people feel more safe and as a deterrent for crime as a whole. And then I'll let Mary talk about any questions that you might have or any just a brief description of what YES provides.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle. Come on up, Mary. Go ahead, and I just want to make a real quick comment.
Okay. I'm Mary Fraser Mines, Executive Director of Youth Emergency Services. I live at 14115 Hartman Avenue in Omaha.
I was just going to say thank you for your presentation in our pre-meeting. You covered a lot of items. I'll leave it to you on how detailed you want to go, but you did a great job upstairs with us. So
Thank you. I will just say that if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. How about that?
that's fine. Any questions for Mary? And just for everybody else here, we had a lot of questions upstairs, and Mary sat and answered most of our questions, I would say. Okay. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Any other proponents wishing to speak?
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Hornacek. I'm the president and CEO for Together, 812 South 24th Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68108. I am here as a proponent of Youth Emergency Services Campus Project. Youth Emergency Services has been the leader in our community supporting youth experiencing homelessness for decades. Their support provides necessary resources and services to help youth in our community stabilize. Together's relationship with Youth Emergency Services is long, and we've worked together in our community and neighborhood to prevent and end homelessness for youth and adults. Together is supportive of this project and new campus for Youth Emergency Services because it brings together on one campus the collective services required to support youth experiencing homelessness in our community, to help them stabilize in a healthy community and environment. But more importantly, youth are the future of our great community, and an investment in our youth is an investment in our community and our future. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Comments or questions from the board?
Just a quick comment. I'd like to thank you for the services that you offer. I think it's very important to the community and what you're doing. And I think this project will help you fulfill your mission and achieve the mission that you're desiring for your guests. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric.
Yeah, so obviously we went through a lot of details in the pre-meeting. I just want to point out there's two different use permits. So there's a special use permit for the large group living, so that will proceed to City Council with the plating and rezoning. And then there is the conditional use permit for the non-commercial day shelter, which will not proceed. Basically, the planning board has ultimate authority on that. I can also answer any questions. There isn't anything I need to specifically point out. I think it's very thorough in the recommendation report, and everyone is pretty well covered. In addition to those two use permits, there are some other permitted uses that are allowed: multifamily residential, general offices, guidance services. So there are, it's a very, there's many services that this organization is providing. We think it's a great use. It belongs in the urban core in the downtown area where it's very accessible, different modes of transportation right next to the interstate system. So we believe that this is a right fit for the proposal. So unless you have any questions, I would start with the recommendation on agenda item 6, which is the plat and rezoning, which is very straightforward. There's only a few conditions with the plat. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from R8 to CBD. Approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 3 conditions in the recommendation report. Approval of the final plat subject to an acceptable final subdivision agreement if necessary prior to forwarding to City Council.
Do we have a motion?
I motion for approval of the rezoning from R8 to CBD, approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 3 conditions in the recommendation report, and approval of the final plat subject to submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement if necessary before forwarding the request to City Council.
Motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
And then agenda item number 20.
For agenda item 20, staff recommends approval of a special use permit to allow large group living in the CBD district, subject to the 6 conditions in the recommendation report. We vote on that first. So we'd need a motion, then we'd do
Okay.
it a separate motion for the conditions.
Do we have a motion?
I move approval of the special use permit to allow large group living in the CBD, subject to the 6 conditions outlined in the recommendation report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
And then regarding the second item, staff recommends approval of a conditional use permit to allow a non-commercial day shelter in the CBD district, subject to the 7 conditions in the recommendation report.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the conditional use permit to allow non-commercial day shelter in the CBD, subject to the 7 conditions in staff report.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Franklin? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Thank you, Mary, for what you do, all your work.
Thank you.
Moving on, agenda item number 15. Case C10-21-277. Applicant, Gander Company Design and Build LLC, request rezoning from R8 to NBD. Property is located within an NCE overlay district. Location 4907 Underwood Ave. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Hello, my name is Amanda Schnatz. I am with Slate Architecture, speaking partly on behalf of Gander Design. What we are proposing today, I will kind of put this, I've got some documents to put up on the screen here. Currently what we're showing is we're asking for a rezone on catty corner to the corner of 49th and Underwood in the Dundee area. Right now we have 2 existing buildings, one of which we're proposing to demolish completely, one of which we're proposing to stay. And what we would like to do is also build a new construction retail that straddles the 2 properties, of which I have here. Thank you. Existing apartments to stay here, single-story retail on street level, and upon further review of what we would like to demolish of the existing building, we've also like to propose 3 stories of apartments on top of the retail for a total of 4 stories in this area.
The applicant, I'm sorry, ma'am,
Yeah.
does the applicant also own the existing apartments?
The ones that we're proposing to stay?
Yep.
He is in conjunction with the neighbor, yes. So AJ here, he owns the property 4709, and Scott owns the property 4907. And we have been working with both of them and have approval of both parties to move forward with this design.
Okay.
Yep. Just showing here how the 2 different tenant spaces could potentially interact with a shared corridor, mechanical space, and restrooms. And then moving up to on the 2nd and 3rd stories, we would propose to have 2 living units on each story with a single penthouse unit on the 4th floor for a total of 5 units in the new apartment area. And here also is a rendering showing the, here, I'll take Here is a rendering showing the single-story retail on the street level with the 3 stories of apartments above. We do account for a step back on the 2nd and 3rd stories with an additional step back on the 4th story. The materials that we're proposing are in line with what we see in the Dundee area. So using materials of brick, some precast stone to kind of help to incorporate some of those architectural features that we see in Dundee. And then as well as the addition of a large storefront on either side of the tenant spaces to help with the street level transparency as well in the neighborhood. Are there any questions so far?
The existing apartment building's
Yeah.
just to the right of the new back behind the
Correct.
commercial.
Correct.
space.
Yes, we have 2 stories of apartments on this side, and then the existing building that we're recommending stay at 4907 would be located behind this side of the retail space.
I have a question. I may have missed this in the pre-meeting. If this was already discussed, I apologize. So is one owner requesting an easement from the other for this design to move forward?
No easement is being requested.
We will. So this
Sir-
project will be a
Sir,
joint venture.
We need your name and address,
Sure.
please.
AJ McClay, President, Gander Co. Design and Build, 7630 Pacific Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68114.
Thank you.
Sorry for that. Yeah, so this project could be a joint venture between myself, Scott Stevens, he's the owner of 4909. I'm the owner of 4907. Currently, Scott does have his own driveway that does intersect with Underwood. We are proposing closing that, and yes, he would have a right-of-way through my driveway, which is currently on the east side. So the idea would be to drive traffic to one driveway to expand the amount of square footage we could put on the retail side.
But the parcels are remain, you're not combining the parcels.
We're not combining the parcels, no.
What type of retail are you envisioning?
Currently, we're envisioning restaurant, bar space, I think is at present. The big conditional item right now is what type of square footage we're looking at for the retail on 4907, which would be the property to the east. If we are to move forward with approval on the project as we have it here, we may consider 2 bays, which we would probably still likely stay in the retail space of bakery, coffee shop, restaurant, something that would be along the same lines that's in Dundee. The idea would be to source local owner-operators and try and diversify a little bit of the restaurant space there, but to bring back some of the neighborhood feel that you kind of have now with the current restaurants of Mark's and Eat Creamery and those items. And we want it to be more of a designation spot rather than just another recreation of chains and that sort of thing.
So, bars and restaurants, obviously Dundee's kind of a neighborhood within
Right.
town, right?
Yep.
And a lot of people walk in
Absolutely.
that area, but
Yeah.
there still will be some traffic,
Sure.
obviously, right? You
Yep.
know, if I decide to leave my West Omaha home and visit the establishment, I'm gonna have to drive my car, most likely to get there.
Yes.
So what do you envision for parking and in late night hours with the
Sure.
bar to work with that area?
So right now, we haven't proposed any additional commercial bay parking. We're hoping to gain 1 or 2 more spots. There are a couple nodes right now there that currently house green space that would likely be removed for parking because of the driveway. With the removal of the driveway, we're hoping to add 1 or 2 more spots. Currently on site, there's existing parking for the residents. So regardless of the commercial side, the residents in the building will have their own private spaces in the back. So the idea would be at minimum to drive traffic. You can see here, thanks Amanda. At minimum right here, so this is my current drive, and we're gonna keep our area in the back to be reserved for the resident parking. But right now, we don't have any proposed additional commercial parking except for what we can recreate from the removal of the existing driveway.
AJ, that looks like about 10 parking stalls that exist. How many people are in the existing? How many apartments in the existing building?
So currently in the existing apartment building, there's 4 units, and they're all 1-bedroom units. So
Okay.
currently, everybody, it's a 1-vehicle limit to each apartment right now.
Okay.
Scott does have a outbuilding here that he plans to keep. So as we have it drawn, and I also have an outbuilding here that we do plan to keep as well. So as we have it drawn, I'm going to shoot for 5 spaces. We also have an option to increase parking here. This is actually going to be a green space for their tenants for both my project and for Scott's. We're going to give that back to tenants, but we are also going to see what it turns out to be if there's extra parking spaces in these areas here as well.
How many units in the apartments?
The new apartments will have 5 units. And
Five total?
5 total.
3 stories, 5 total?
3 stories, 5 total. Two on the second floor, 2 on the third floor, and 1 on the top floor.
Okay. That seems to be, from just my lens, it seems to be a little bit of a challenge to have retail and residential units or multifamily units and limited parking.
Sure.
Right? Because even if you have visitors come to your establishment,
Yep.
the neighborhood still parks in the street.
Yes.
There, right?
Yep.
So I see that as a real challenge, and I don't know, Eric, if you're going to talk about that a little bit, but I look at that as a real potential issue.
Even though it's NBD, no parking's required, it's still,
It's going to be challenging.
Yeah,
somebody drives up, they gotta have a place to park. So.
And I think that's, I'm gonna talk to Scott and Amanda and Jeremy as well, but I'm hoping we have enough space to reuse these for visitor parking. And so the tenants will actually have reserved visitor parking. They'll have their own reserved parking space, and then they'll also have a visitor parking spot as well. And I think based on this, we should be able to gain 2 spots. For the top floor unit's gonna be 2 bedrooms. I'm hoping we can fit in 2 spots. But if we can't, and we end up needing extra visitor parking, we're hoping to, visitor parking would probably take priority over adding a second spot for the top floor unit. So we're hoping to minimize overflow from visitors as much as we can, and it is difficult too. The multifamily to the east of us, they have those spots reserved in front on the street. So those street side spots are reserved for there. So we do lose a little bit there. But I'm hoping we can at least drive visitor flow to the back of the property and keep it off the front as we can, as best we can.
And if I'm not mistaken, all of those other homes in that area, that's street parking.
It's all street parking.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, not technically. The homes, the homes on the other side, they have alley parking.
They do.
They have their own driveways in front, and they also have alley parking as well. So everyone on each side of the street, as far as the homes existing go, all have rear parking, all of them. And the businesses, so just to the west, there's 3 businesses. Each of those homes all house businesses, some therapists and things like that. So they aesthetically have the appearance of the home, but they're all run as commercial as well. They all have their own reserved parking in the back as well. So the idea would be generally, there's only a few of those spots between the 50 and 49 block that require the street parking, as Better Homes and Garden has their own reserved parking in the rear as well. So a lot of those, Marks is one of the only ones that does not have its own designated rear parking. Maybe they have some, but the idea would be keep as many of our business operations for these off the street, my residential off the street, and leave it only for the retail that we can put in there.
So the second part of my question was hours of operation and late night noise in a neighborhood.
Sure.
So I don't know if you've thought that far in advance, but do you anticipate this being a 1 a.m. or whatever the time is now to close, 2 a.m.
Sure.
establishment, or is it going to be a 9 or 10 o'clock at
Michael,
night?
Sure.
2 a.m.
Yeah. You guys are late night.
I'm just waking up.
Party harder than I do. So I don't want to speak for Scott. I know he has an idea. So Scott is actually a member of the ownership of Scriptown Brewery as well, and I know they had been working on a potential concept for that, but I don't want to speak for him in terms of what he determines to do with it. But for mine, I'm anticipating coffee shop, lunch, maybe dinner. I don't anticipate to have a bar run out of there. So 10 o'clock, 9, 10 o'clock, we're probably looking at.
For your side.
Yeah, for my purposes, it won't be anything late night. It'll be very similar to what's there in Dundee. For the Dundee Dell pitch, those items, we're trying to keep it probably relatively the same as those.
And there is the Underwood bar that's across the street.
There is. There's your late
If it
night
does
spot.
happen.
Yeah.
So is it close? I don't know where that's at. Where's that?
So you know where we looked at the bakery?
Yeah.
Across the street, it's next door.
Next to that?
Yeah, so they do have some late night hours that they run, but that there is an existing precedence there for it.
Communication been with neighbors and the association, the neighborhood association.
Hi,
It's all
Sarah.
there.
So Sarah, we actually, I feel like we had a great, very productive conversation on Monday night with the Dundee Memorial Park Association. We were able to get our plans in front of them to get their ideas and opinions on how they feel it's going to integrate into the community and integrate into the street. And I think it was receptive. They had very much the same questions you did, which revolved more around parking and how we're going to manage flow of traffic. And I think those are totally legitimate questions, and we'll do, like I said, we'll do the best we can to keep at least residents off. But Overall, I think it was receptive, and pending, preliminary approval and future plans, I think it was overall receptive. And the idea of hoping to promote a little more growth and diversity and depth to Dundee. I think the retail scene and the commercial scene has fallen a little bit behind in terms of where maybe Dundee residents want it to be or not be, but you've seen a lot of turnover. You've seen Dundee Dell has new ownership, and they've done a lot of remodeling there to try and bring that back up to today. So I think there's a bit of a turnover happening, and I think this is be a good project to bring it to the forefront while also trying to add a bit of diversity and a bit of density also to Dundee, which doesn't really exist now. And so it's very hard to get density into Dundee. I get it. I'm a Dundee resident, lifelong, born and raised. So I understand the heartburn, that can come along with density. So I'm hoping this is at least a lighter way of bringing in a bit of that, with also bringing in a bit of new retail as well. Hopefully they thought that too.
Thank you, AJ.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Amanda. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? You don't know if you might be, but that's all right. Come on down, give your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Sarah Nelson. My address is 4806 Underwood Avenue, and I am speaking on behalf of the Dundee Memorial Park Association Board. So yeah, I don't feel comfortable being up here as a opponent because, like I said, we met with them. We like the design. We like the launching point of the brick. Usually we have to fight for that. So we were very happy that that came on first thing. The property that exists there that will be torn down, yes, it's an older home. There's nothing super great about it. So, we're not that we like the idea of tearing down homes. Obviously, this will be the 13th home, though. Just want to say that this will be the 13th home. We've got 3 new developments coming to Dundee, and this will be the 13th home torn down. And so my job as the co-president is getting very difficult. So I feel like I do need to say that, though, that 13 seems like a lot. But our concerns are traffic, as AJ said. We've got that 4-way stop on 50th and Underwood with the stoplights that is very busy. I think the evening that we had the board meeting, somebody got hit at that intersection, which is obviously very tragic. Something that we want to avoid at all costs. Dundee is a very pedestrian-heavy neighborhood. You'll always see a jogger, no matter what temperature it is. You'll see a jogger out there. You'll see people walking their dogs. So we want to keep it pedestrian-friendly and not produce too much traffic into the neighborhood. So that was our main concern is parking, traffic, and trash. With that one driveway that is really close to that multi-family unit, right to the east of the proposed new building. We don't quite understand how trash is going to work, and we definitely don't want to see it brought to the front of the building. So that's our concerns. But again, I don't think that we'd say we are opposed. But we'd like to see some improvements or some clarification. So.
And you're okay with the proposed uses of the retail space?
Okay, thank you. Retail, absolutely. So there is one bar, Underwood Bar, closer to the node, closer to the hub of the business district. We have a good relationship with them. If they get too noisy, we say, hey, you guys need to quiet down, because we are a neighborhood, and we want to stay that way. We don't want to be a Benson. We don't want to be a Blackstone. We want to be a quiet, quaint neighborhood that has a little bit of activity. So retail, absolutely. Bars, especially that close to the neighborhood. You're getting into the neighborhood on that east side. That would be a little too much. So, any other questions?
I've seen the lines outside the script town before. Like, you don't want that.
No. Yeah, we love it for them.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Yes, thank you.
Any other opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Amanda or AJ, did you want to come up? Sarah made the point about trash. can you address that? Yeah. We'll need your name and address again.
AJ McClay, 7630 Pacific Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68114. Yeah, and we did cover that a little bit. I wish I had more specifics onto how that's going to look. I think honestly it would take maybe another conversation with Waste Management or some of the entities there as to what options we do have. The idea would be, actually, Amanda, do you have that layout real quick? Because that is a good point, and I've thought about that. It's logistically, it's a bit complicated. With this, we for sure want to have the trash in the back. And so I think we're going to try and put it somewhere in this area ideally. But if we do have to get it somewhere right here so it's an easier pickup, the idea would be either way to have trash vehicles or whatever options we have to come to the rear, pick up the trash, and then leave this direction. And the idea would be this is the furthest east driveway on the street until you get to the multifamily, which is right here. So I want to keep that trash and that pickup as far away from the main level of the retail and the main level of Dundee as we can get it. But again, I don't have specifics until I maybe talk with them a little further and see what options they have for me.
There's no alleyway behind?
There's no alleyway access, no.
AJ, is that a garage?
Currently,
on the corner?
if you want to call it that, yes.
It's staying?
It is going to stay. We don't have specific plans for that yet. That's why we left it off here, but this footprint will stay either way. And it may stay in its current condition. It may get rehabbed, but likely Scott and I will keep those. It's storage for us right now, and it may stay that way.
And then this is just a technicality that I wanted to bring up too. We were looking at the LLC to figure out who the principal was, and it looks like it's expired.
Yes,
Or is it
until tomorrow. Yeah, I'm buying a couple properties, and they mentioned that to me this week, and so I got all my paperwork ready to go to Lincoln tomorrow morning. So, yes, they told me it's a much longer wait to mail it in, so the drive is worth it.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you, appreciate it.
Any additional comments or questions? Eric?
Yeah, so a couple items to touch on. The Dundee NCE plan does say that R8 zoning along Underwood Avenue should be converted to MBD zoning. As you can see on the zoning map, nearly every other property is zoned MBD. I believe just this subject site and the multifamily directly to the east is still R8. So we do encourage and support the NCE zoning. It's already has the NCE overlay, but support the MBD zoning. Now that same document with the NCE overlay does talk about a step back when the building is above 30 feet, and that the rendering that was shown does appear to have that provision in place. If the applicant is willing, I would almost encourage for you to submit that rendering as part of our file so that we can include that rendering when it goes to City Council. I know the City Council members might like to see that image before the actual meeting, so just maybe a recommendation there that'll leave it up to the applicant. We didn't do an official site plan review with a rezoning. Things can change. So I don't have any specific comments other than that step back requirement that will need to be addressed at building permit time. MBD parking or MBD zoning does not require parking, as we're all familiar with. As part of the NCE streetscaping plan, much of that diagonal parking as well as landscape nodes were put in place. So we would not support any removal of those landscaping nodes. I believe that one additional parking space is where the current driveway into one of the sites is now. We do have the comment that Public Works and Planning will need to be involved with the striping of any additional stalls, and just wanted to throw that out there about preserving the landscaping nodes that were put in place. I'm sure Amanda is already on top of this, but they'll have to work through any potential building code when you're having dual ownership on these properties with any building potentially crossing over the property line. It's not as much a zoning concern because there's zero setbacks with the MBD zoning, but that's something that building code wise will need to be addressed before building permit submittal. I think that's all I have. I do appreciate the thorough site plan and the rendering that was shown. I think there will be a lot of discussion at this at City Council, so I think that presentation was good and something that we encourage. So with that being said, staff recommends approval of the rezoning.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Yes.
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 Yeah, I'm just going to give an editorial here first of all and say that I'm very supportive of development and redevelopment projects such as this, but I do have some deep concerns over the questions that I asked today. I really do. With that, just because there's so many moving parts to it and it's got to work just perfectly, right? But I'll support it and vote yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 8-0, 7-0.
Agenda item number 19, case C8-21-280. Applicant Jeff McGregor request approval of a special use permit to allow convenience storage in the CC District, location southwest of 192nd Street and Grant Avenue. And is the applicant here? You okay?
Jeff McGregor, 11750 Stonegate Circle, Omaha, Nebraska. The property is located on the northwest corner of 192nd and Blondo Parkway. I will show a rendering of that here. Currently, it's owned by Edward Rose. We have it under contract to purchase. There's 2 separate lots. This is an outlot here to make room for a 192nd Street expansion and overpass to go over railroad tracks and Blondo Parkway. I had a chance to look at the staff report, and I think we had a few comments on our initial proposal. One was that the elevation of the building exceeded the 20-foot height restriction, and so I wanted to share that we have reduced the height of the main leasing office to 20 feet and to meet that requirement. Another comment was to remove, there were faux doors on the second story of the over-under building, Building D, and we've removed those as well. Another comment was to increase trees along Grant Avenue. I believe the required number of trees along Grant Avenue was 27, and we've met that requirement as well. Another staff comment was to increase the trees along Blondo Parkway to be 66, and I think we had originally 34, so we increased that landscaping requirement along Blondo Parkway to meet that. I wanted to issue a slight correction, which I believe our engineer Kyle Hasse had mentioned earlier in the pre-meeting. This site is actually going to be 5.143 acres, the storage component site. And then we have preliminary plans to do a multi-tenant building along Grant Avenue.
I'm sorry, what kind of building?
A multi-tenant building, something that would abide by the CC zoning requirements for the area. And I think the report had noted like 2.3 acres. So I just want to clarify that this site is actually slightly larger than that. Prior to coming here, I did host a meeting where I reserved a meeting place and sent out my own notice to all the residents in a 600-foot radius of the property to invite them out to the Mark, and reserved a office space out there to host a meeting to see if any of the neighbors had any concerns. I did have one group, a husband and wife team show up that just wanted to learn a little bit more about the project. One of the things they wanted to see was sidewalks. They said they didn't really object to the use of it because where their house was and the way 192nd Street was going to eventually go through, they would never actually see it, and it was pretty far away from their site. One of the staff comments was that we needed to provide a 10-foot sidewalk or make room for a 10-foot sidewalk along Grant Ave, which we have done so, and then also provide a typical standard sidewalk along Blondo Parkway, which we will also provide. And they were the only two that showed up. I don't know that I have any other comments. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Architect Paul Kelly is here, as well as our civil engineer, Kyle Hasse. Thank you.
Okay, any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments, questions? Jeff, I just want to say thank you for going out 600 feet and advertising for a meeting, and it's too bad only 2 people showed up, but maybe that's good for you too, that not much opposition, so. And I appreciate the trees going in. I don't like these storage facilities at the entrances of subdivisions, but can't stop it, but it's nice to have the trees and kind of buffer that look. Additional comments, questions from the board? Eric?
Yeah, so obviously Jeff touched on several of the items that we'll need some revisions on, so that's great that they've already started implementing those, and we'll have to get those plans submitted to us. So we appreciate that, and we'll continue to work with the applicant on what is needed before proceeding to city council. But yeah, basically revised site and landscape plans. Sorry for the typo on the acreage. We'll get that fixed in the official recommendation report. I don't think I have much else to add. So unless there's any questions, staff recommends approval of special use permit to allow convenient storage in the CC district, subject to the 12 conditions in the recommendation report.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I motion for approval of the special use permit to allow convenient storage in the CC district, subject to the 12 conditions in the recommendation report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Thanks, guys, for coming down. I think that's the end of the agenda items. We got a motion for last month's pre-meeting and public meeting minutes.
Move to approve September's pre-meeting and meeting minutes.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
And before I ask for an adjournment, Debbie, I'm sorry, I keep wanting to say Lisa all day.
That's okay. I'll answer.
Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you record the vote, please?
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Adjourn.
Thank
This
you,
is
Debbie.
Alex. This is one of our new planners in long range division. So
Oh.